Yes, it's okay. It's connecting. Setting up your meeting for Facebook Live. It is connecting.
Yeah, live on Facebook. I can see that.
Again, okay.
1 second. Let me also
Oh,
see it on the Facebook page. Not able to see that on your Facebook page, Prabhu.
okay. It is showing. Uh, Wait. Okay.
Which page you
I'm
have?
able to see it. Just give it some more time. I can see it.
Acha, acha.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. Chalo, let's start now. Um,
Yes, we can. I can see it.
yeah, you have to also turn on your video,
All right. Oh, okay. Technology.
and you can also start the recording, and you record on the cloud
All right. Okay.
instead of not on the computer but on the cloud.
On the cloud. Yeah. So you can. So everyone can access. Okay. Record to the cloud. Okay.
Hmm.
So we are recording now.
Yeah. Okay. And you can also make Rajiv Prabhu the co-host.
Yes. So that way, Rajiv Prabhu can help me admit people. So thank you, Rajiv Prabhu, for willing to take this responsibility. Okay, let me see.
Sure, Prabhu. What am I supposed to do being a co-host? If you can explain to me
Yes, so
briefly.
yeah, so you will just need to make sure that people who are coming in, you admit them, because sometimes I may not be able to keep track of that. So yeah, so now you are co-host.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So can we start?
we can start. Sure, yeah.
Okay, Prabhu.
Okay, after all the technology formalities and challenges were scaled, now we are ready to get going. So today, hello everyone. My name is Aritra, and today we are hosting a talk show with a very accomplished businessman, Pratik Desai, who is from Mumbai. He lives with his family in Mumbai. He has got an amazing track record behind him that scales multiple areas, but the most prominent ones I will just say. So prior to this, he had an illustrious academic stint as a graduate student at the prestigious University of Florida. He's a spiritualist. No, I should say he's an intellectual spiritualist who has spent over a decade practicing and, more importantly, teaching people to live a life centered on the principles enunciated in the legendary Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam through the medium of ISKCON, or the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Now, given the depth of his understanding of the subtleties of our existence, the meaning and purpose of life, Pratik is the person to talk with in unraveling the mysteries of destiny and free will, karma. You've heard that so many times. So, before we go further with our session, I want to mention a little story about Pratik, how he began his spiritual journey, what material impediments actually catalyzed his spiritual journey. But I think it'll do more justice if I let Pratik talk about his story. So Pratik, would you like to share your story, the start of your spiritual journey, and how you got to this point from the beginning, for the pleasure of our audience and for our inspiration. So over to you.
Okay. So first of all, thank you so much, Aditra, for inviting me to the talk show, and it's a great honor and privilege to be a part of the show. Um, I think you probably forgot to introduce yourself. You are also a very wonderful, amazing spiritual seeker, and along with your material accomplishments, you are a wonderful person also. So Aritra, he is a senior consultant in Deloitte Consulting USA. and he has been residing in US for since a long time. So it's a great honor for me to be a part of the show. Okay, so regarding my journey, it's not so wonderful, but definitely I think how I came into this path is something that many of people would like to know. So basically, it all started with actually from the earlier days. No one expected that I would join this path because I was happy-go-lucky kind of a person, and always, you know, um, fun was my main thing. I was very funny with everything, and I also used to laugh at all the spiritualists. I used to make fun of them, and I never thought myself that I would be into this scenario one day in the future. So I used to make fun of all the spiritualist people and all that. And I do remember one time when I was going to Mathura, uh, when my family was going to Mathura. We have a big family. So my mama's side, we were going to Mathura for the rituals of my grandmother. And then in the train, I met some ISKCON devotees, and they were talking about some spiritual stuff, which I was not able to accept, which not able to digest it. So I was laughing at them, and then I was also making fun of them. Uh, but then, who knew? Later on, I will be in the same demeanor as they are. So right from the beginning, I was very much attracted to Krishna, his personality, and in the mornings I used to watch a lot of spiritual serials like Ramayana, Mahabharata, Vishnu Puran, Shiv Puran, Jai Ganga Maya, Jai Ganesh. So that was my daily schedule. Whether I was in school or in college, or whether I did my graduation also, I made it a point that I used to watch every single day. Every Sunday. Sorry, because Mahabharat is a serial which is, I think, loved by millions of people throughout India, and Ramayana also. So somehow I was like getting attracted to the messages of the, the spiritual context of the scriptures, and at the same time the acting which was you know portrayed by wonderful actors in the Mahabharata. It was very attractive, and especially what attracted or charmed me is the character of Krishna. And so then I started going to temples very frequently when I was in my engineering days, and then I applied for master's degree. So now during this period, I had a lot of questions, but I never bothered to ask them because I was not concerned so much about finding the absolute truth and why people are suffering and all that. But it's like, unless and until you undergo the same experience that people are undergoing, when they suffer and you experience the same thing, then something within you starts bothering you, right? So I when I went for my master's studies in US, I got so homesick, and somehow I took up very heavy courses, very difficult courses in the beginning, probably because of overconfidence or something. And then I was never habituated to stay in the US alone, and I was always living in my house, and everything was like spoon, feeding for me, because my mother used to uh, cook everything for me, and she used to give me everything, like without any efforts. So I think that made me extremely homesick, and I was not able to understand what it means to go outside, live outside, and uh, you know like see the struggles of life, and also face the struggles, and how to also manage all these responsibilities and all. That was very new for me. This was the first time. It was very challenging for me, because I got everything spoon fed, like, directly. So uh, so I was uh, extremely homesick, and I have a you know you can say uh, something which is very disadvantage to my character is that I'm a kind of fanatic person. So if I decide something to do, then at no cost I will do it. I will not listen to anyone, and I will go ahead and do it. Okay, so I took that decision that I would like to go back to my house. I cannot stay here now. So within 2 months, so now obviously there were a lot of emotions going around, and parents were very dissatisfied. They were definitely all of them were angry at me. But in spite of all these things, I had decided. Once I decided, then I have to do it. So then I did it. And so when I came back after 2 months, then when I came here, then people actually kind of humiliated me, and they were also some people, they started calling me, you are a fool. You came back from US. People are looking for opportunities. They want to go abroad. They want to study, and everyone thinks that going to the US means you get a lot of brighter opportunities, career wise, in terms of comfort wise, everything. So when I came back, people started they started humiliating me. They started making fun of me also, and it was actually very difficult. It was intense period. And then back during the school and college days also, I had undergone some problems. Okay, but it was not so intense. I was able to manage and handle it. But this was something that I was not able to handle it because a lot of humiliation. And so somehow this time I made sure that, okay, now I would like to know, if there is a God, then why all these things is happening, and people are suffering. I am also suffering. I used to suffer earlier also. I had health problems also. So why all this is happening to me now? So then I decided that, back in the US, I had a conversation with my roommate. Uh, Unfortunately, he was shot dead. He was my roommate. He was shot dead. Uh, so I had got admitted to Duke University in my master's program, and I shared my emotions and my whatever circumstances are, I was sharing with my roommate, and he was pursuing his PhD, and he was from Jadavpur University. He's a very famous Jadavpur University, and then later on he did his MTech from IIT. So I used to share my problems with him, and I used to tell him that, okay, this is what I'm feeling. I want to go back. And so he was also trying to convince me. So one time I told him that I asked him that, have you seen the Mahabharata? And he told me something very important. It actually directly, uh, you know, it impacted me a lot. And he told me that actually, if you want to, if you want to learn something from spiritual life, you have to actually read the scriptures. You cannot just watch on television and come to some conclusion, or you can understand from the television, but you have to learn from the scriptures. You have to read the scriptures. So that point struck me a lot. And he said that you have to read the Bhagavad Gita. You cannot just depend on the television show, because the television is catering to a wide variety of people, and sometimes there is also some masala in that. Okay, so you will not be able to understand the meaning of the scripture unless and until you read something. So that struck me. And when I came to India, the first thing that I did is that, okay, let me now start reading the Bhagavad Gita. I would like to know. So in our house, we had a old Bhagavad Gita, maybe 10 years old or something. It was lying there. I had seen the Bhagavad Gita in my house. So I asked my mother that, if you have a copy of Bhagavad Gita, please give it to me. So then I started reading the Bhagavad Gita. And as soon as I started reading Bhagavad Gita, I got so much attracted and enthused that after a few months on my own, I decided that, okay, now let me go and fight back. Okay, I have left the battle in the middle. So now I have to actually fight back and I have to win the battle. So I decided, okay, I think I can do it. And I got a lot of confidence also. I met some devotees also at Jew temple, and one of the senior devotees also was answering my questions. So he was helping me, and then I had a desire that let me, because obviously the essence of the Bhagavad Gita is to serve the Lord unconditionally. So I had a desire that, okay, let me now serve the Lord. I was looking for an opportunity to serve the Lord along with my studies. And so fortunately, Krishna reciprocated back, and I was admitted into University of Florida, where I got a waiver of 40% also in my tuition fee. And luckily, uh, this is one of the best places in the US to study, University of Florida. It's one of the best colleges in aerospace engineering. At the same time, spiritually also, it has a excellent environment. So we have a lot of Prabhupada disciples who are living there, and a lot of devotees also. And most importantly for a student, the prasadam, which is served on campus, daily they are distributing thousands of plates, right, Monday to Friday. So they have been doing this since 1971.
Okay.
So anyways, so I read the Bhagavad Gita, I got that confidence. And so it is kind of similar to the story of Arjuna when he was, deciding to withdraw and leave the battle in between. But somehow he had the direct association of Krishna to convince him. I had the association of devotees. Okay, so at least I went back and I fought the battle. I finished my master's in 1.5 year. But then again, recession had hit US like anything. It was the biggest recession the US has had faced ever since a long time. So that time also, because of Bhagavad Gita, because of the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita and the spiritual values that I cultivated since a long time, uh, that actually helped me to face all these circumstances. And I couldn't get a job that time also, and I had to come back to India. Tentatively, I applied for a PhD program, and I was not at all interested in that. But there was no option, so I had to opt for it. And so I went again to the US, but within a span of 6 months, I was like not really comfortable because I'm not a research type of person. So I withdrew from it and again came back. So now this journey was extremely difficult for me, very tough for me, because I had no career, I had no work, nothing. And in spite of having a master's degree in aerospace engineering, right? So that was very challenging period. And so somehow my mama, he actually suggested that you can try starting up, aircraft spare parts trading business. And so he helped me provide me the contacts and all. And somehow I started that, but it went good for like 3 years. Later on, I understood that if you want to sustain in this line, you have to be a big shot. You have to be an investor. But I did not have so much money, and I no longer wanted to take any debt from anyone. I didn't want to take any loan, and didn't want to be in debt also. I just decided that whatever I will do it through my own efforts and through my own expenses. So then later on, my father-in-law actually, he kind of suggested us that uh, there is a lot of scope in civil repairing rehabilitation work, and that's how from that point onwards myself and my wife, we have continued from there. So we have currently this business of repairing and rehabilitation of overhead water tanks, ground uh, some reservoirs, elevated some reservoirs, and similar kind of work, which is basically civil repairing and rehabilitation. So this is how my journey actually started. But because of the spiritual values that I cultivated from the Bhagavad Gita and from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and obviously because of teachings of Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas, I have been able to face all these struggles, and now ultimately I am trying to do something. So
Okay. That was a very amazing story. Very interesting sequence of events that brought you to this point. But it's a long period that we are talking about, and several things happened. So, and you obviously had your spiritual awakening, and you found a path through which you were able to um, get more context, understanding of what you are meant to do. But let me ask you a question for the benefit of all the viewers. Now, all these events that happened in your life, some of them are very amazing. So, what would you attribute these to? Like, yes, there are decisions we make, but why is it that different people undergo different circumstances that affect them? So since we are this talk show is about unraveling the mysteries of destiny, karma, free will. So I would like to know a little bit about that what do we attribute these different paths that people's lives take, and different experiences that they go through? How do we understand them?
okay, yeah. So see, every living entity is an individual, and they have their own free choice. And that free choice is so important for all of us, because that is how we uh, identify ourselves. If everything is one, if all of us are one, then what is the what is the meaning of existence of others? I mean, there should be only one person, but if there should be variety, then obviously all of us should have some differences, right? In fact, many differences also. Then that will create variety. So, in order to variety for exist, people must have free will. In order to love someone, also you must have free will, right? So, love is expressed only through free will. If I have a remote control and if I control you through that remote control, and if I tell you what to do, what you should do, what you should not do, okay, and you are not even sentimental, okay, you don't have any sentiments, okay, if I just keep pressing the buttons and you just obey my instructions, then you become a robot, right? So love is actually expressed when you have a choice, when you have a will that you want to do something or you don't want to do something. So because every living entity has a free will, that's why they have created their own paths,
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Mhm.
right? So yeah, and this is how we express our love to the Supreme Lord and to our fellow living entities also. So without free will, there is no concept of love.
Okay. So eventually, the choices that we make um, leads us to different paths, to different courses, to different experiences. But does it? So you're saying that you brought the the concept of love. Okay. So and love for the supreme. So how is it that so does do we understand that everyone is making choices which will ultimately lead to love of that supreme, or is it that some people will get there but other people will just keep going on in their journey?
Okay, so I think the question that you are asking is about the living entity's connection with the Supreme Lord. Okay, but
Yeah.
before that, I would probably um expect that we discuss something about karma and free will,
Sure.
uh, and how that is connected. All these things are connected actually to each other.
Yeah,
So
that would be
because
good.
we want to give some background about what is karma.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with understanding what is karma. Now, generally, when you talk about karma, uh, people remember about the Bhagavad Gita shloka. Uh, Karmaneva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Right? Everyone knows that shloka by heart, and everyone knows that just by doing your karma, you can actually, you just keep on doing your karma, just keep on doing your duty, and do not worry about the results. This is what people understand. But later on, in many verses in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says that not, you don't have to just be detached from your results of the work that you do, but you have to also offer it to me, right? So this aspect of the Bhagavad Gita is actually not taken into consideration, and people, they want to work for their own enjoyment.
Mhm.
Okay. So now, in another sloka in the Bhagavad Gita, it also says that work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise it causes bondage in the material world. Okay. So now, if someone will work for their own self, then that work will also cause bondage in the material world, right? So karma is not exactly about acting in society, but it is also meant to understand what is the purpose of this karma. Why do we have this karma, first of all? So people should think that why we are stuck in the cycle of karma. What is the reason for that,
Okay.
right? Uh, and so, um, in order to explain karma, I would like to share something that we know the concept of dharma and adharma. People have different understandings about the concept of dharma and adharma. But my question is that how do you know what is dharma, what is adharma? Sometimes the context of dharma can change, and sometimes the context of dharma can change. And I would like to explain this with a very relevant, uh, you know, relevant pastime from the Mahabharata. So if you remember, Krishna was the charioteer of Arjuna, and they were all together in the battlefield. So Yudhishthir Maharaj was also there, and the Pandavas were also there. And on the opposite side, there are the Kauravas, Bhishma, Pitama, Dronacharya, and so many others. So now, according to Mahabharata, it is mentioned in the Mahabharata that Yudhishthir Maharaj's feet never touched the ground. Why? Because he always practiced dharma. He was the incarnation of dharma. Okay. So that's why whoever is following dharma, whoever is actually the personification of dharma, he's not subjected to the material world. He's not like for example, it is also mentioned in the scriptures that when the demigods they came from the higher planetary systems to earth, so their feet also never touched the ground. They were also above the ground. Okay, because this material world is too inferior for them. And so similarly, someone who is very pious, who is very dharmic, this material world does not belong to him. He's supposed to be in the upper planetary systems. Okay, so Yudhishthir Maharaj's feet did not touch the ground because he was personification of dharma. When there was a plot to kill Dronacharya, so that time Krishna suggested to Yudhishthir that somehow we have to make a plan to get rid of Dronacharya, and for that you'll have to tell a lie. And so he said that okay, Ashwathama has died because Ashwathama was the son of Dronacharya. But Yudhishthir Maharaj could not accept this. He thought this was against the principle of dharma. Okay, but this is something that Krishna directly suggested to Yudhishthir Maharaj. Now, because Yudhishthir Maharaj was so attached to dharma, so-called principles of dharma, according to his understanding. So what happened is when this plot was organized, so that time Yudhishthir Maharaj did say Ashwathama is killed, but there was a time gap between Ashwathama is killed and that time Bhima, he actually blew the conch shell, and he heard only Krishna knew what Yudhishthir Maharaj said. So actually Yudhishthir Maharaj said Ashwathama the elephant is killed. Okay, but when he said the elephant, Bhima that time he blew the conch shell, and the word the elephant was covered by that sound, right? So what happened is Yudhishthir Maharaj maintained his righteousness even after being suggested by Krishna directly. Now because of this, what happened, as soon as Yudhishthir Maharaj did not follow Krishna's instruction, his feet touched the ground. Okay, so because Yudhishthir did not follow Krishna, who is actually the creator of dharma and adharma, who is from whom everything originates, he had to also see hell for some moments. Yudhishthir Maharaj, being the personification of dharma, he also had to see hell for some time. Okay, just because he did not follow Krishna's instruction. So now what is the lesson from this? It's very simple. It's very straightforward. When you talk about dharma, karma, akarma, vikarma, there is an absolute standard, okay, which is set by someone, and he is the controller of that. He is the originator and creator of that. So according to that person's will and wish, dharma will also take on different meanings. Okay, so sometimes we say that violence can be used in the service of dharma. Like for example, the entire purpose of the Bhagavad Gita was to actually convince Arjun to fight the battle. Okay, like for example, we have Gandhiji who actually interpreted in a very different way, and he promoted the idea that we should always be non-violent. But actually, Bhagavad Gita message is completely opposite, which is actually to engage in battle, to convince Arjuna to fight the battle, right? So dharma and adharma takes on different depending on context, it will have different circumstances. And so you cannot say that violence is dharma and violence is adharma. It will depend on the context. Okay, so if you want to decide what is dharma, adharma, you have to follow the person who is creating that dharma and adharma, because he's going to give the reaction of that adharma and dharma. Correct? So see, let's say for example, if a person is sinful and he has done all types of sinful activities. On the other hand, there is a very pious person. But if the sinful person does not receive any reaction for his sinful activities, then is there a difference between the two? He can do whatever he wishes to do, and this person, if he thinks that I have to restrain myself, I have to control myself, I have to take perform some austerity so that I will live a very pious and moral life. Is there a difference between the two? Technically, no difference. Why? Because the other person also not receiving the reaction, and this person is also not going to receive reaction because he's not sinful anyways. So basically, you decide what is dharma and adharma by the reaction that you receive. So if a person performs impious activity or sinful activity, he will receive a corresponding result or corresponding action, which means that he will suffer for that. Okay. And the person who is performing pious activity, he will be awarded. This is how we understand what is dharma and adharma. Okay. So now, if both people will receive the same kind of reaction, then how will you discriminate what is dharma and what is adharma? Right?
So, if I can ask a question that's related to what you just mentioned, deciding what is dharma adharma. So one thing is by seeing the outcome, but
Yeah.
So thing one, how do we know like each action that we perform? So we perform like umpteen number of actions in a day, leave alone the lifetime. How do we?
Yeah.
What should be the basis of our choosing, so that we
Yeah.
know that what we are performing is dharma or adharma? Because there are like
Yeah.
so many actions we are performing. Is it possible to have like a laundry list of everything that maps them to dharma?
Yeah.
How do we know that?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was explaining all these fundamental principles of dharma. So basically, what we get to understand is that if we want to get a good reaction or we want to get awarded for a particular activity, then we have to follow the person who is going to award us. And if we want to avoid suffering, then also we have to follow the person who is going to save us from all these sufferings, or he is going to destroy all the reactions to the sufferings. See, so basically, the fact that karma is existing, it is coming from an absolute person.
Okay.
And that absolute person we call as God. He is the designer of the karma, right? Now he's basically he's the giver of reaction. He's the giver of reaction to the karma of the living entity. Okay, so basically everything is in his control. So that's why we say that one of the definitions of God is that he is the absolute controller. Okay. No one can control him, but he controls everything. That's one of the definition of God. Okay. Now, if he's the controller, that means that we are supposed to follow him. And that's exactly what happened with Yudhishthira Maharaj. He did not follow Krishna. He thought that dharma is superior to Krishna. But he did not understand that dharma is actually coming from Krishna. So whatever Krishna wishes and desires, that becomes dharma. And so with this reference, I have a very important shloka to share from the Padma Puran. It is said, Man nimitta kritam papam api dharmaya kalpate mam anadritya dharmopi papam snan mat prabhavata. If one sins for my sake, his sins become pious deeds. If one refuses to worship me, then by my power, his pious deeds becomes sins. So this verse is from Padma Purana. So do you understand this? It's a very simple thing to understand. Like for example, whenever you buy electronic item, you get a manual, right? And in the manual, you get instructions. If you do this, then you will be able to, whatever instrument you are buying, it will work nicely, and it will, they have warranty period and all that. So if you follow that, then everything will work nicely. But if you do something that is not recommended, or it is strongly, like they say something that you should try to avoid this, and if you do that, then the device will break, or it will, it will no longer work, or it will probably uh, it will become dysfunctional before its expiry. Okay, so similarly, when you are in the material world, there is a manual which is given by the Supreme Lord, and that manual is the scripture. So to answer your question, what is dharma, adharma, that has to be understood through the eyes of scriptures. Okay, and now because scripture is an ocean, and there's a lot of contradiction also in the scriptures. So in order to understand scriptures, you also require the help of guru or a devotee. That is very explicitly stated in the scriptures, that you cannot understand scriptures unless you approach a guru, right? So if you want to understand what's dharma and dharma, then you have to follow a representative of the Supreme Lord, because he will guide you, or he will direct you with the same message as the Lord has instructed Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. So it's a parampara, it's a descendant succession. Okay, so basically the guru should be a via medium, should be a transparent medium between yourself and Krishna. Okay, he has to transmit the message of Krishna very clearly. So that's how you'll actually understand what is dharma, dharma.
Okay. So a follow-up question there, and again, like all this is for the benefit of all of us viewers who want to know, like in depth. So yes, now we know what adharma is, what dharma is, by following the person, the absolute being who is constituting this system of dharma, adharma, and we do so by following scriptures, which is explained to us by realized souls we call guru. The question is, they say karma is cyclic, the cycle of karma. Is it even possible? Okay, we know what we should do, what we should not do, but they say that pious deeds will get you pious reactions, but impious deeds will get you impious reactions, but you're still in that circle. Is it possible to break free from that circle? Is there anything like that that's possible, to develop some kind of escape velocity to come out of that cycle of karma? Very curious.
Yeah. So basically the cycle of karma is birth, death, old age, disease. If you want to come out of it, then it is recommended in the scriptures that you establish a loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, and by his grace you will be able to come out of it, because he is the creator of these karma. He is the one who is actually rewarding everyone according to their karmas. So now obviously there is a difference between blaming on the Supreme Lord that he is responsible for our karma and all that, and instead of that, taking responsibility on ourselves and saying that, okay, we are the ones who are responsible. So I just wanted to explain a very fundamental principle on the difference between destiny and free will, because or karma. Okay, because many people think that it is the Lord who is responsible for all these activities, or he's the one who is actually giving us the suffering. Okay, and they start blaming the Lord. Now see, let's say people say that there is destiny, and some of them believe that there is only destiny. Okay, now the question is that if there is only destiny, what is the purpose of that? Let's say if the Supreme Lord has created or has given only, he has only assigned destiny to all the living entities, what is the purpose of that? Why would the Supreme Lord bestow destiny or assign destiny to everyone? What he is going to gain out of that?
Yes, that's an interesting
It does not make sense, right? So along with destiny, now destiny does exist in the sense that you create your destiny. Okay, because by your free wills you are creating impressions. By creating impressions, you are also creating a pattern of life, and that pattern of life is also going to come back in the next life. Okay, and that will form a nature or habit. It will form a nature or habit in a person. Okay, and because of that habit or nature, a person will be committed to perform sinful activities. Okay, now yeah, impressions.
Mhm.
So for example, whatever, let's say in this life, you are habituated to drinking, okay, and probably, or you are habituated to smoking and you are a chain smoker. So what will happen? You'll keep smoking throughout the day, like maybe 20, 30, 40 times a day, and you'll do it for the rest of your life. Okay. So basically you'll be intoxicated. And so at the time of death, so according to the Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned that whatever you think at the time of death, you attain the same state in the next life. Right? So because you get intoxicated through that smoking, you also attain a similar state in the next life. And these impressions are carried forward in the next life also. See, the principle when you talk about karma, we have to speak about reincarnation also. Karma and reincarnation are inseparable. You cannot have just one life, and it's not possible to vanquish all the karma in one life. Okay. You have to have multiple lifetimes, because in each and every lifetimes you are making multiple choices, you are making many choices. It's not that you are just bearing the reaction of your karma from the past life, but in this life also you have free will. So you are making choices, and that choice is actually leading you to the next life, where you have to also suffer, or you will be awarded for your karma. Okay. So otherwise what will happen? Life will become unfair. If there is no reincarnation, life becomes unfair, because some people will suffer, some people will not suffer, right? If this is the only life that we
So
have.
it's not true. So it's definitely not true that we live only once, as one of the popular sayings go. We do live
Yeah.
multiple times. Mhm.
Okay. So okay, let's counter question this. Okay, let's assume that we only live one life. Now tell me, first of all, why are we here in this material world just for this one life? And then who is going to decide how long we are going to live? And then how come suddenly, all of a sudden we have this baggage of karma with us in this one life? It
Yeah,
does not make sense.
doesn't make sense, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So just having destiny or just assigning destiny to living entities, that does not make sense. If we say that, okay, there was only one lifetime where we made a choice, and then the rest of the lifetimes we are just suffering, or we are just, in the state of, we are destined to do something in the upcoming lifetimes. That also does not make sense, because what you are doing is basically you are saying that in that one lifetime you are making choices, you are making some choices in that one lifetime, and the Supreme Lord is actually, uh, he is allowing us to suffer eternally. If you say that there is only one life with a choice, and then upcoming lifetimes we are just puppets, right? So from this logic, we can clearly understand that we have free will each and every lifetime. It's not that you have free will only in one lifetime, and then remaining lifetimes you are just following your destiny, right? Another thing is that, uh, in one lifetime, if you say that you are making choices, but that is for a very small amount of time. The time frame of 100 years, see, now obviously 100 years is just, uh, the duration of time in Kali Yuga. But what about the previous yugas? In Dwapar Yuga, people used to live for 1,000 years. In Treta Yuga, for 10,000 years. And in Satyuga, for 1 lakh years. So now, how come? So someone will say that, okay, if I have just one lifetime, why I'm born in Satyuga, or why I'm born in Kali Yuga? Again, why that kind of discrimination is there? So it does not make sense. So the principle of reincarnation and karma and free will is eternal. So in each and every lifetime, you have got a free will, and you bear the reaction of your karma. Okay. And that is an eternal cycle, unless and until you want to come out of this material world. You realize that people are suffering, it's a place full of misery and suffering. Till that time, you just keep coming back in this material world. Whether you perform pious activity or impious activity, you'll keep coming back to this material world because you are attached to the material world. You are attached to the material things of this world. So, according to the principles of Bhagavad Gita, ये था माम प्रपदन्ते तम सतैव भजाम्यहम् मान वर्तमानो वर्तन्ते मनुष्य पार्थ सर्वसा. So the way you approach the Supreme Lord, the way he will reciprocate with you. If you do not want the Supreme Lord, he will put a curtain between you and him. And he will say that, okay, if you do not want me, then keep continuing in this material world. Although he desperately wants you back in the spiritual world. But if you don't want the Supreme Lord, he cannot force. He does not force anyone. The Bhagavad Gita message is also very clear. At the end, Krishna is asking Arjuna, so are you ready now? Are you convinced? You want to fight the battle? He does not say that it's my instruction, it's my order, and you are like a robot for me. I'm just pressing the button. You have to follow me. No, everyone has free will. Krishna also respects the free will of each and every living entity, and they make choices. So that through free will, love is expressed. And so if someone does not want to love the Lord, then the Supreme Lord does not interfere in their life. But still, he will make all the arrangements so that the person will realize that how merciful is the Lord, how loving is the Lord. So just like a loving father, he cannot reject the child. If the child becomes rebellious, he leaves the father and he goes away. Okay, but the father is always loving towards the child, kind towards the child. He always remembers the child and he wants that the child will come back to him. So in that sense, the Lord also will keep arranging. He will come himself, or he will also send incarnations, or he will also send his agents again and again to remind us that, okay, he's actually waiting for us. So that way we can connect with him. Right? So the idea of karma is basically when you desire to separately enjoy from the Supreme Lord, then you come to this material world and you get entangled in the cycle of, because you want to become the master. You want to be the master, you want to be the controller. And so basically that means that you want to take the position of the father, because there is only one supreme controller. And when you try to control things, that's an ego. It's a sign of ego. Right? So where there is pure love, a selfless love, there is only the attitude of service, and there is the attitude of appreciation. So now the Supreme Lord is so great that he also wants to become the servant of his devotees. He forgets the position of being God, supreme controller, but he wants to get controlled by his devotees. That's his nature. So when the Supreme Lord himself wants to give up that designation, why are we struggling to take that position and trying to become the master and controller? So we will experience the bliss when we start serving each other, when we start serving Supreme Lord. In that spirit, we start seeing everyone as our brother and sister, and we start serving everyone. If we try to exploit someone, then what we are doing is we are trying to control someone, and we are trying to enjoy someone. And that is lust. That is not love. Okay, if you want to be the master of other living entities, then what you are doing is you are taking the position of a enjoyer. Okay, and that is something which creates all the problems in this world. So someone wants to enjoy separately from God, he will come to this material world, and this material world is like a model for him. Okay, like just for example, the father, let's say, a child goes in the kitchen and the father is cooking something, and the child is like only just like 3 years old, and the child sees that the father is cooking, and he also wants to experience that. So he will go to the father and he will tell him that, okay, please allow me to cook also. But the father knows that if he cooks, then he'll get burned off, right? So but what the child, so he'll try to explain to the child that this is not meant for you, and once you grow older, you can do it. Okay, but the child becomes restless, he becomes very insistent that no, I want to do it. Then what the father will do, he will He will not try to use his powers. What he will do very lovingly, he will try to explain to the child. So what he does is, he will provide a toy kitchen to the child, and then he will tell, okay, so I have got a kitchen set up for you. Now you go and start cooking. So the child will go and he will start cooking, but he will see that nothing is getting cooked. So he will be frustrated. And then he will go to the father and will say that, okay, I was very happy seeing you cooking in the kitchen, instead of me personally going and cooking, right? So this is the scenario. What we want to do is, we want to exploit, we want to enjoy in the material world, we want to control others. As soon as the tendency will come, we will be frustrated in the material world, we'll never be happy. Okay. And so it is also important to realize that we have to serve each other, but we should not forget that the center of each other is actually God. So when you reject God, there is no meaning of serving other living entities, because he is the cause of everyone. And because of him, love is, love is actually it's originated from God. So why you are experiencing happiness, it's because of his grace, because love is created by him, right? By the Supreme Lord. So when you neglect and when you reject the Father, then obviously your love is incomplete. You cannot complete it. Only when, just like in a family, you have a family and you have the father in the center. And it's like saying that, okay, I will love my brothers and sisters, but I will ignore and reject my father. Right? So what kind of love is that? That does not make sense. So if you want love to be complete, the father has to be the main person, because he's the center. Because of him, you have your siblings. So because of him, we have all the living entities to share our love, to express our love. Right? And so it does not make sense if you reject the father. So basically, this cycle of karma starts from there. The moment we reject the father and we come to this material world, we want to enjoy separately from the father. So then we start making choices. And in that sequence of making choices, we became entangled to the material world, the attractions of the material world. And then we take multiple lifetimes, unless and until we get free from that.
So karma is like a correctional mechanism to correct our lusty propensity and take it back gradually by allowing us to exercise our free will to again back to that state of pure love that we have for the Lord. Is that like a summary understanding of karma?
Yeah. So basically, this is the purpose of karma actually, to understand the real meaning of karma, is to know that why I am performing the karma. Because ultimately everything in the material world is temporary. It is going to go away at the time of death, right? And then you are not even sure what kind of lifetime you are going to attain in the next life. So we have to know the purpose, why we are here, why we are working. Okay. And then that purpose has to be connected to the supreme goal. Then we get free from this. And so that's why, like, just for example, when a child wants to go back to the father will forget everything. And, initially the child is suffering, but then once he go back to the father, because the father is the richest person in the world, so then he's going to enjoy, right? So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that Sarva Dharman Patitaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja Aham Tva Sarva Papevya Moksha Amima Sucha. That if you abandon all these so-called lower dharmas, lower principles, and you surrender to me, or in other words, surrender, it does not exactly mean the way, you show a gun and ask someone to surrender to you. It's not like that. But basically what he wants is that you just take his shelter. You completely take his shelter. You just have faith, complete faith in his direction, and he will free us from all the sinful reactions that we had performed earlier. So this is the mercy of the Supreme Lord, that whatever sinful activities we perform, we still can get free from it completely, or we get a token reaction of that if we just follow his direction and make a point, make it our goal to go back to him. Then what will happen? He will free us from the reactions. Why? Very simple. Because he's the one who is going to give us the reactions. See why we are suffering, why we are awarded for our past activities, why do we suffer for in past activities? Who is giving the reactions? It is the Supreme Lord. So he, being the supreme controller, he can immediately destroy all these reactions. He can nullify all these reactions, right? But we have to make a connection with him. So as soon as we make connection and we follow the process that he has described, then we get free from this cyclic reaction, which means that you escape from the cycle of birth and old age disease. And then you go back to his abode in the spiritual world, where there is no suffering, there is no misery. There is only a life of full of happiness, bliss, knowledge, eternity.
Okay. So I would also like to give the others who have joined over Zoom an opportunity to ask you further questions, and I'm also monitoring our Facebook page, my Facebook page, for questions. So since we are like very close to the ending, so I would like to open the floor to any other questions from the other participants, the other attendees.
Okay,
Please
you
unmute yourself
probably
and feel free to ask a question on this topic from Pratik. Or you could even type your question. I'm monitoring everything. I'm monitoring the Zoom chat as well as the Facebook page. Okay, so I am not seeing any questions come through at the moment. But yes, okay, so I'm not seeing any questions, but so one follow-up question. So that means there is nothing like coincidence or luck. Is that correct? But everything is happening as a result of some choices we have made. Is that correct? Because yes, people often use that term luck, by luck or luckily or by coincidence. What do you say about that?
yeah. So as we discussed earlier, that everything is because of our karma, which is coming from previous lifetime or this lifetime, and we create destiny according to that. So now we have an option to change our karma also to some extent, in the sense that if you are suffering in your life, then you can change your karma by following some prescriptions. Actually, the amazing thing is that how do we know whether we have a free will or whether we are just following our destiny? Is the fact that you have scriptures, and the scriptures is asking you what to do, what not to do, right? So if there was only destiny, what was the use of scriptures? The fact that scripture is asking you, is suggesting you what you should do, what you should not do, that means that we have a free will, right? So in each and every lifetime we have a free will, and so there is obviously nothing as luck or something. It is all dependent on one's own choice. So let's try to understand the difference between destiny and free will. Let's say if you are traveling from one place to another place, let's say you are taking a flight from one country to another country, India to US. Now you wanted to go to US, and accordingly you have booked a flight, but somehow due to some reasons, let's say you boarded some other flight. Okay. uh, and let's say that flight is supposed to go to Japan instead of US. So let's say by some mistake or something happened and you have boarded that particular flight. Now after boarding the flight, and once the flight took off, you don't have any choice. You are supposed to land in Japan, right? So now in that journey, how are you going to react? If you become angry, if you keep shouting, and if you rebel, okay, then that is your choice. That is one choice. The other choice is that, in spite of knowing that, okay, now because you committed a mistake, so you have to land at Japan, but you accept it, and then you carry on with your regular work and duties in the flight, and it does not affect you so much. Okay, so that's another choice. So now this is the same way we understand. Now you were destined to go to Japan because of your past karmas. Okay, but in that scenario, in that circumstances, what are the choices that you are making that is going to create your next lifetime? So in this life, we are going to get happiness and distress according to the choices that we made in the previous life. Okay, and sometimes happiness and distress can also come from this life, the choices that we make in this life. Like for example, I know that if I eat ice cream every day, then my neck will start burning. I will have problem. But because I'm so intoxicated for ice cream, I just overlook that. And I just keep having ice creams. Then what will be the consequence? I know what is going to happen, right? So now in certain instances, we can also know why we are suffering. And we can also understand that we perform some activity and we are suffering because of that. So in this life also we can actually know the principle of karma is working. It is not that karma is only speculation and we are just assigning karma to some kind of past mental activity, or just giving some name that, okay, you are suffering because of karma, and you don't even know about it. Okay, no, it's not like that. Even in this life also, you will be able to experience sufficient amount of experiences you'll get when you perform some activity, and you'll get a corresponding reaction for that. Okay, at the same time, it is also not feasible to reveal to you all the karmas, all the decisions that you have taken in the previous life, or whatever has happened in the previous life. Let's say, for example, if the Lord revealed to you all these situations, let's say, for example, you get the revelation that one of your relatives killed your brother in the previous life, then you will not be able to have relationships in this world, in this life. You will be always in anxiety and depression, because and this is not just one lifetime. People generally see, when people think of karma, they are thinking in just one lifetime period. They forget that they have been existing for a long time, not just one lifetime, but for probably millions of lifetimes. So obviously it is not possible for you to digest the karma, the situation, circumstances of all the millions of lifetimes in one lifetime. If you know about it, you will not be able to sustain that. You will be in depression. Okay, and you will not be able to live your life, right? So that's why you cannot understand certain things, and the Lord does not also reveal it to you. Okay, there are some rare cases where a few people, they have been able to recollect some memories of your past lifetimes. This is also there. There are many videos on YouTube about this, past life regressions, like that. There are very rare cases, but mostly 99% of the cases or more, you will see that you will not be able to recollect your past life. Okay, in fact, dreams are also one of the way to understand that you had some karma in the previous lifetimes, because in the dreams you also see certain things which you have never seen in this life, or you have never done in this life. So dream is another thing. And the third thing is intuition. So each and every one of us, we are following certain intuitions of like the intuitions are coming from the consciousness. So why everyone is different, why we like certain things, why we want to do certain things. So these things, it's mainly because we have created some impressions from the previous life, and we are just continuing with those impressions. And so the scriptures also say that it is actually the super soul, the Paramatma within the heart, which is reminding us of our previous tendencies in this life. Okay, so these are all the things that can actually make us convinced that, okay, there is a past life, there is something called as karma, and we are suffering this life because of karma. Okay, and it is not something which is made up, it is a real thing, right?
So, Prabhuji, I have a query. Can I ask?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Prabhuji, so if now that I'm convinced that nothing happens is a coincidence and it's all a result of the karma, so if I have an experience where somebody has harmed me, then should I accept that as a result of my karma and not react, or should I take up inspiration from what Lord Krishna inspired Arjuna to fight, because that is the message of Gita? So then should I fight, or should I just accept that, oh, it is karma, and then it's probably just an account that has been settled and I should keep my dhairya and not react? So what should be the right way forward?
Yeah. Uh, so we see from the scriptures, from Mahabharata, from the Gita, and from the Puranas, these are all stories. Uh, and, you know, we can clearly understand that we have to act according to our varnashram also. Okay, so for example, a Brahmana, so there are 4 varnas, 4 ashramas, and the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, and then Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasi. So, ideally speaking, the sannyasi or the Brahmanas, they are supposed to be tolerant and they are supposed to be detached. So, if someone tries to harm a Brahmana or a sannyasi, they are supposed to act in a very tolerant way, in a very humble way, thinking that it has happened because of their own karma. Okay. Whereas, if the same thing will happen to a Kshatriya, then they are supposed to retaliate. Okay. Now, obviously, so one has to act according to their position. In Kali Yuga, everyone is a Sudra. Okay. Kalau Sudra Sambhava. So there is no question of the 4 Varnas and Ashramas unless until you also mix the element of devotion in that. Everyone is a Sudra. Everyone is like the mentality of all the living entities in Kali Yuga is like a Sudra. So what we do is we understand how we are supposed to act from Guru Sadhu Shastra. Okay. And what we have to do is we have to internally we'll have to cultivate that attitude of tolerance, and externally we have to also take action, right? So if someone comes and cheats you, does not mean that you say that, okay, please come and cheat me because I'm destined to suffer that. It does not work like that. So we have to also act in the material world, and we have to make sure that we protect ourselves from all kinds of cheatings and all kinds of injustices that are happening in the world, and we act accordingly. Okay, so we have to protect ourselves, and if required and needed, then we have to defend, and we have to also hit others. So this is also the message of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is inspiring Arjuna to fight and kill all the Kauravas. So similarly, depending on our situation and position, we have to act accordingly. Okay, and so if we are not sure about how we are supposed to act, then we should take guidance from Guru Sadhu Shastra. Then we'll actually be able to act. But in all the ashrams, one thing is common. Ultimately, we have to learn internal detachment. We have to learn cultivation, internal cultivation, which means that if someone harms you, you have to cultivate that attitude of compassion also, that internally you always pray for the welfare of that person, even for the enemy. Okay, but externally, whatever is required, whatever duty you have to perform, you have to do it. Okay, so these are 2 different things: internal cultivation and external action. These 2 things should go simultaneously, because ultimately we have to know that every living entity is a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and they are in certain situations and circumstances, and so we should feel pity and compassion upon them, and so we should also pray for their welfare. And so we understand that they are acting like this because of their conditionings. Okay, it's not that purposefully they are doing this. If they realize that they are servants of the Supreme Lord and all the living entities, if they realize that, then they will not do it. They will not harm anyone. But because they are covered with ignorance, they are acting like that. So internally, we should always try to cultivate that spirit of compassion, tolerance, mercy. We should pray for them. But externally, according to our stature, we have to also act like that. Okay. So I hope it makes sense to you.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you. So I think what essentially both the forces are at work. We have to know that nothing is out of the purview of karma, but at the same time, it does not mean that we just take everything lying back, because finally we have come here to do action and action in devotional service. So keeping Krishna at center, I think we have to look for the way forward. Not make it too personal, but keeping Krishna at center.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't carry it, we don't carry everything on our minds forever. We have to let it go, and we have to also develop compassion, and we have to forgive. So we have to develop the ability of forgiveness. That's how actually we also advance in our own spiritual realization and consciousness.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rajiv ji, for your question. That was a very nice clarifying question, because that's also a very practical question. So with this, I would still like to hear if there are any other questions for Pratik. It's been very invaluable to have someone like Pratik talk about something that is so commonly used but not as well understood. So any further questions, please feel free to ask questions.
Okay, so I got a question from someone, and the question is that if if God knows everything, then how do we have free will? Okay, so yeah, it's a very good question, and the answer is quite simple also. If you understand the simple fact that for Krishna or for God, everything is present. There is no past, there is no future for God. Past and future exist for us living entities because we are bounded in the material world and we have a time frame. Okay, but the Supreme Lord is beyond the time, and for the Supreme Lord, everything is present. That's why, although he does know what is going to happen and what choices the living entity is going to make, but still that does not interfere with the free will of the living entity. Just for example, uh, let's say you know a person very well. Okay, you know the person for more than 5, 10 years, 15 years. So you become familiar with their natures, and you observe one thing, that whenever they are faced with some circumstances, they react in the same way every time. Okay, the person reacts in the same way every time whenever the person experiences similar kind of situation every time, right? So now let's say if the person reacts 10 times in those 10 circumstances in the same way, so when the circumstances will repeat for the 11th time, you will also know how he's going to react, correct? But at the same time, the person also has a free will. Right? So similarly, the Supreme Lord is present in everyone's heart as Super Soul, as Paramatma. So he is like a recorder. He records everything. Okay, and he's recording not just in this life, but all your previous recordings are there with him, and he has unlimited storage. Not like today's computer, laptops, and all, where they have like 500 GB, 1 TB, 2 TB, or like that. But he has unlimited TBs because he's unlimited. So he records everything, and he's also the giver of the results. Right? He's also giving the reaction of the choice that you are making. So that's why for him it is very easy to predict. in fact, not just predict, but completely accurate in his judgment. He's not like, so we kind of predict for a person that, okay, this is how he's going to behave now, in the similar situation. But maybe there is a chance that the person may change himself, and he may react or behave in a different way. Okay, but there is no question of prediction for the Supreme Lord. uh, his judgment is 100% accurate. That's why he knows the past, present, and future of every living entity, because he's always present. For him, everything is present. There is no past and future for him. So he's seeing from a transcendental vision. And he's also the giver of reactions. He's also present in the heart of every living entity as a super soul. So obviously, it's not so difficult to understand. So free will and the Supreme Lord knowledge is, it is actually, it's not something that you think that, okay, how it can happen. It can exist simultaneously.
Okay, so we have another question that's like another very pertinent. Will destiny from this is from Swati. Will destiny change if we make wrong choices? Or to put it in a slightly different way, can destiny change even?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so see, there are two concepts here. Destiny can be changed by karmis, and destiny can be changed by devotees. Uh, when we say karmis, it means that those who are not devotees of the Supreme Lord, they can also change their destiny to some extent. They are, but it is quite limited. Uh, in the sense that, let's say, for example, if you are in a circumstance where you are distressed and you are not able to come out of it, so then you go to astrologer and then you consult the astrologer, and the astrologer will recommend you certain things you do, and so probably you may be able to come out of that. Okay. So now see, the fact that astrology is also Jyotish Shastra, which is also there in the scripture, it means that yes, you can also change your karma to some extent. Otherwise, obviously, what is the use of astrology, right? So you can change your karma. In other words, you can make a distressed situation into a happy situation, and that may happen. It's not necessary it will happen, but it may happen. Okay. So for karmis, karma can be changed to some extent, but ultimately they cannot conquer birth, death, old age, disease. So they have to keep coming back to the material world. Whereas for a devotee, everything changes. Uh, so and everything will change drastically. Okay, we cannot even predict. That's why it's said that for a devotee, there is no point of going to astrologer, because a devotee's the lines of karma, they are changing every instant. Okay, and at the same time, devotees also attain the abode of the Supreme Lord. So they may take a few lifetimes, but ultimately they get free from this karmic cycle and they'll go to the Lord. So yeah, I hope it answers your question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pratik. So Swati, did that answer your question? Did you have follow-up questions, or anyone else have follow-up questions?
Okay.
Oh, okay. So thank you so much, Pratik, for taking time to answer all the questions, like enlighten us about the whole concept of action and reaction we call karma, and also going into specifics how karma, how do we incur karma, and what we can do to be free from karma, and it everything is in perspective of our relationship with the absolute truth, God. So thank you so much for that. It was very enlightening, and I hope that we can have more such sessions where we, pick different topics. And so, yeah, with that, I would like to close. If in case you have anything to, say to our viewers, it would be great. Else, thank you very much again.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Aditra, for arranging this. And I also thanks all the participants who have taken their time out of their busy schedule and made a point to attend it. So I'm thank you to all of you. Probably looking forward to the next session.
Us too.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. You have to, I think you have to stop the